the Healing Through Love podcast with Charlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast. I'm Charlene Lynch, and together we're shining a light on hope, resilience, and transformation in the journey to end domestic violence. Each week we bring you inspiring interviews with changemakers, survivors, advocates, and experts who are making a difference in the lives of those affected by domestic and family violence. Whether you're on this healing journey yourself or you're supporting someone who is, this is a safe space for powerful stories, practical tools, and heartfelt inspiration. Let's heal through love together. Today, I've got a very exciting guest. We've got Kel-Anne. She is a seasoned speaker and recording artist with over 30 years of experience. She doesn't look that old to have 30 years of experience. She must have started singing when she was 2, and multiple records across Australia, the UK, and the USA. Alongside her music career, she is trained wellness and mindset coach, passionate about helping others transform from the inside out. Oh, this is the way we like to do business, drawing from her own journey of overcoming challenges and her professional training. Kel-Anne blends mindset mastery, emotional resilience, and cellular wellness to guide people into lasting healing empowerment. Oh, that's exactly the words we love to hear. Using proven tools like NLP, so that's neuro-linguistic programming, six intellect factors. We've got to dive in and find out about that. The gratitude practice. She helps others shift their mindset, unlock potential, and create meaningful change. With heart-led approach, Kel-Anne empowers others to reclaim their inner strength, embrace holistic healing, and live with purpose, vitality, and confidence. Hello and welcome.
Thank you, Charlene. Nice to meet you.
It's so great to have you, and thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. So, wow, what a journey, and the outcome is amazing. But can you reach back and tell us a little bit about your journey?
Oh, okay. So it's been a while, and thank you for the compliment of I must have been 2 when that happened. When people find out how old my children were, I always say, "Oh, I was 2 when I had them." So thank you. Yeah, so I won't go back too far because there's nearly 68 years worth to go back to. But I came from a home where my parents divorced when I was a baby, and lived with my mum and my grandmother and my great-great-grandmother, my grandfather, and then my mother remarried. And when I was about 5, and then when I was about 16, things started to go a little bit downhill at home. And due to, what was going on at home, I ended up meeting my first husband. So he was older, and I was 16. I'd left school and I was working, and I was just, swept away with it. My mother let us get engaged, but I think she realised, I'd either come to my senses or we'd end up marrying later on. But it ended up, we ended up, getting married. And I didn't have to get married, as they used to say in those days. I wasn't pregnant or anything. But I ended up getting married. And honestly, that 16-year-old girl, if only she knew. So he was a drinker, and I learnt the hard way not to argue with him when he was drinking. So basically, he was 21, I was 16, and I ended up having 2 children. So that was the gift from that marriage, was my 2 beautiful children. But there was violence, especially with the drinking. I was alone. There was a lot of, as women with, that are in the middle of domestic violence know, it's not just the physical abuse, it's the mental abuse. And told that, because I was so young so immature emotionally. And I was believing what he was saying about me, that I was, useless basically, and just everything I did wasn't right. And I really had no confidence and such low self-esteem at the time. I didn't even know what self-esteem was. It all came to a head when my daughter was a baby, and we went next door to a neighbour's, and he'd been working, came back, and he just started drinking at this party. And I was breastfeeding my daughter at the time, and I left the party to feed her and everything. And he was just really getting stuck into the alcohol. And anyway, I was questioning him about some things that he was doing, which were quite embarrassing at this party. He lost it with me, and next minute I'm being dragged along the floor by my hair. And yeah, it was really bad, because he always used to say before that, when I'm going to punch you in places, people aren't going to see the bruises. No one's going to know. But this time he lost it, and I had bruises all over me. And so I hid in the house for a few days, because I didn't want people to see the bruises, because I felt it was my fault. I shouldn't have argued with him when he'd been drinking, all this stuff. And by this time I was in my early 20s, and my neighbor came, and I forgot about the bruises on my arm, because it was warm weather, and I didn't have my arm covered. And she saw the bruising and everything. She took me to a doctor. The doctor said I'd have to, they were going to put me on Valium, because I was a bit of a nervous wreck. They were going to said I should press charges and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, I was too scared to, because every other time I tried to get away from him, he threatened to hurt the children. He even held my son over an embankment one time and said, if you don't get in the car, I'm going to drop him, when he was a baby. So I was really frightened and scared of what he was capable of doing. I didn't want to put him to the test. So anyway, I didn't report it, and I ended up, continuing on. But, we sort of separated at times, but, we get back together and all this sort of thing. In-house separations, because he wouldn't leave and I couldn't leave the kids. And so it was always very traumatic. For 17 years I put up with it, and then I finally got away after 17 years. But when I was going through all that, I ended up being sent for treatment, because one day I'd fed my daughter, and I put her down, and I started to feel like I was having a heart attack or a stroke or something. And I was at a friend's house, and they rang an ambulance, and it ended up being a panic attack. And that was the first time I'd ever had one. I didn't know what they were then. I knew that I'd had, bad nerves and everything with what had happened to me as a child, and so on. So my grandmother used to say that I was a nervous child, but I learned later there was a reason for the way my body was reacting to things. But it took a lot of therapy. Oh. So the therapist, and one of the things he suggested, because he knew that, my mum was a singer. He knew that I used to sing, in choirs and things like that when I was a kid, and that I could sing. And he suggested that I get up on stage and I sing. So that therapy, I mean, when I first got up on stage and sang, you would have thought that there was an earthquake. It was ridiculous. I was just shaking so much that it ended up being a 30 plus, nearly 40-year, singing recording career. So absolutely, that was the opportunity that came out of that. And that helped me heal. But singing is a two-way street. I'm still healing, when I sing. It really does raise your vibration. And I'm helping the audiences as well. They always say, oh, I felt such a healing today. So I'm not singing spiritual songs, but it's just music itself Excuse me, I'm just going to get a tissue.
I love
I'm
it.
not crying. It's cold here.
No, I love it. I love it. Wow, what a journey. That's fantastic. And I must confess, I do love to sing, but usually in the shower, no one else can hear, or at the very front row at church where I can just sing and there's no one in front of me and I'm not going to disturb them. And I do bellow it out, but can't keep a tune. But I do love how singing makes us feel, especially
Yeah.
when you're singing something that's at a high frequency that makes you feel good. I love it. Wow. So that's a huge journey from where you were to where you are now. And now, on top of that, you've obviously lent into different healing modalities. And now you've come full circle and helping others to move forward. So I know that our audience would be curious. Yes, that first step was getting you to sing, but inside, what was the really first step for you to sort of see that this was not supporting you anymore and that you had other choices? Was it the singing came first, or did you make the choice first?
The choice to sing.
No, the choice to be in a different place and be a different person and turn up differently and not let that stop you from moving forward.
Yeah, look, it was a gradual process. And because I was getting that therapy, they were doing hypnotherapy. And so he was actually the therapist in the sessions would be feeding into me about self-esteem and about um, doing things that I love to do and all this sort of stuff. And it was a gradual process. But it wasn't until and I used to think once the kids had grown up, then I'd be able to get out. And I kept staying, and I tried really hard for that marriage to work. But it was just even when, he stopped sort of hitting me, he would rise up as if he was going to. So that fear was always there, but there was still that emotional abuse happening. And it was something that happened with my son that instigated me thinking, I'm staying because of the kids, but it's not doing them any favors. A therapist of my son's said, to me, it's affecting them because of the temper this man had. So that, I eventually got out of that situation and started to move forward separately. It wasn't an easy time. It was a very tumultuous time. And there was a time gap where the kids weren't with me, even though they were teenagers. They weren't with me because they had school, they had this, that, and the other. And even though I was around them, they weren't with me. And I found that extremely hard. And I hit rock bottom again. And I said to my mum, she rang me and I said, Mum, I can't cope with this. I'm trying really hard, but I'm just so drawn to walk out onto the balcony and I'm feeling drawn to it and it's frightening me. She rang her doctor, who was nearby. He rang, what were they called? It was in Parramatta. Anyway, it was not Lifeline, but it was an emergency thing. Within 15 minutes, there was a lady knocking on my door to come and help me. And her therapy helped me get through that. So I learned more tools. So I learned tools from the first therapist. Then I learned tools from this angel of a lady that came and saved me. And there was a whole lot of things. Actually, there was another tool I got just before, no, it would have been just after the singing part of it. The therapist that I had then had prescribed Seropax and Valium for me because that's what they did in those days. It was like, here's a script, this will calm you down, and then they talk to you, whereas I really needed something a little bit different. But anyway, that's how it was. I think there are doctors that do that today as well. So then I wanted to get off them because I didn't want to be addicted to those things. So I took myself off to a place in Newcastle to get off those. They gave me some tapes, which actually helped me. And then this lady came years later and gave me another lot of tapes, and one of them was Louise Hay. So that got me on the Louise Hay path about looking in the mirror and loving yourself and doing all that beautiful work. And that took me on another journey. And then in 1997, facing a near-death experience and being told that I had a malignant disease and probably would never sing again. They found a tumor on my thyroid. They thought it was malignant. When they operated, it was benign. But I was facing that. So that led me to another journey. And that's when I decided I wouldn't just sing, have a day job and sing part-time. That's when I decided to do singing full-time. And that's when I became, that recording artist.
Wow.
So there's been just one thing. And then COVID happened in 2020. And I had burnt vocal cords during that period. I was doing concerts on Facebook for my fans because all the, shows were stopped for the year because of all those lockdowns, and had trouble. And they found that I had these burnt vocal cords. So that sent me on another journey. But I had to be quiet, Charlene. So instead of, thinking all the time, I'll do this and I'll do that. And I was setting up my dining room with lights and getting all dressed up and doing shows all the time for the fans. I couldn't do that. I had to be still and I had to really go within. And I'd studied with Tony Robbins. I'd studied with Bob Proctor. We used to have, weekly calls with Bob Proctor. And I'd studied with a lady here in Australia called Sandy Forster, who's absolutely amazing, and other mentors, because I was interested, because of all I'd learned and what I'd been through. I felt I could help someone else in the same, positions. And so I wanted to pass it forward. But because I was managing myself and touring and doing all these things with my singing, I could never really, do anything about being a mindset or life coach. But I could during the 2020. So I went and did more studies online with the Coaching Institute. And that's where I learned, the metadynamics and the NLP and positive psychology and all these other wonderful modalities. And then I ended up mixing all that up with what I learned from Bob Proctor and Tony Robbins and all the other and life experience and everything else. And later on in 2020, that's when I launched the mindset coaching. And then the health journey was continuing. And then that led me on to another path. And then I ended up incorporating the wellness and the mindset together when I learned about cellular activation and natural cellular activation and that part. So
I love
yeah.
I love it. So, wow. So this is decades of information put together,
Decades.
woven together into a proven process that incorporates not just mindset, but also wellness to create an opportunity for people to shift through the gap from where they are to where they want to be. So if you're looking for more context on this and, this has piqued your curiosity, please reach out to the links that we've got in the show notes and also in the show description as well. I'm going to ask Kel-Anne a question in a moment, but before I do, if you're listening today and you are a survivor of family and or domestic violence, reach out to Healing Through Love. We have Pamper Days, think day spa on steroids, in your local cities. You come for free and beautiful practitioners hold the space, hold the frequency for you for a day of beautiful healing, all for free. So reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you and point you into the right direction to a local one near you. Now, if you're listening today and you yourself are a practitioner, hey, reach out to Healing Through Love. We'd love to have you on the podcast. But also reach out to us if you've got a heart for change and you would like to hold the space at one of these Pamper Days. We can connect you to your local organizer and you can pay it forward for that day and make a difference for a woman that will change her life. I love it. I love it. Kel-Anne, I've got a question for you. In this closing minutes, what would be your final words of wisdom to our audience?
Oh my gosh, so many. Trust your intuition. Listen to yourself. Go within. The power's within. It's not out there. It's in here.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. And it is so true. My catchphrase is that you've got this. And because we're vibrating at the same frequency, Kel-Anne, that we believe that the answer is inside of our audiences listening. Thank you so much for joining us today on Healing Through Love, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Goodbye from me and goodbye from Kel-Anne.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.